AB1,
AB2,
AB3,
AB1 Kenobi, AB4, or
AB5. Are you in California and wondering what all this news is about? It was passed a couple years ago, but the Supreme Court sent it back, and now California is going to be enforcing AB5. Are you an independent contractor or not? Are you exempt from AB5? From Los Angeles and Nashville, get ready to go behind the scenes with Entertainment News. What happens when you pair a director, a voice actor in a world, and some of the most interesting people in entertainment? You're about to find out.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Entertainment Dudes.
Yes, we're excited to have you joining us today. And today's episode is going to deal with some questions that people have regarding California's latest ruling, the AB5 ruling.
AB5.
Yes,
the court rulings most recently actually have made it active. And so a lot of people, we're seeing a lot of news about the truckers protesting this, but it also affects people in the entertainment industry, which is why we have our special guest today, entertainment lawyer extraordinaire, Robert. This always gets me.
Sciglimpaglia.
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 Yes. Yeah.
I always get the Robert part hard, like last time. Robert.
Yeah, the Robert,
part.
that took me quite a while.
Hello, welcome to the show. That's
scratching my head over here.
Yeah, that's right, Cam. You're right. It's very fun to just randomly drop someone into the show. Yeah,
isn't it just great? It's like, I mean, Townsend. The last couple of weeks, that was funny because he was like, whoa.
Good day, sir. Welcome. Thanks for being back on the show again and for joining us to talk about this topic and hopefully shed some light on exactly what it means, what it doesn't mean, whether we should panic or not panic.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
One thing real quick.
Sure. Oh, yes. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Look.
Who's watching us on YouTube.
We just see Robert's mouth now. There we go.
There's his head.
Okay, everybody, like right above Robert's head, just boom, right above Rob's head. Subscribe, please, and then like, and then comment, and tell us what how you're dealing with AB5, or put any questions up, and just interact, and we'll try to come up with the answers.
For those of you who are watching on other platforms, please feel free to give your comments on what you think about the show and rate us 5 stars or 6 if you want to add an extra star somewhere.
6.
But
we go up to 11.
Yes, enough of that. So, sir, Mr. Sciglimpaglia, tell us about AB5.
So I think the what's brought AB5 back in the news again, because it was passed a few years back, 2019, I think, is the Supreme Court of the United States refused to review AB5. That just happened a couple weeks ago. So I think that's why everyone, now it's kind of permanent, because the Supreme Court's not has refused to overturn it and review it, or review it and overturn it.
So what's that? We were talking about that a little bit ago. So what does that mean if the Supreme Court refuses to review something?
So the Supreme Court, and there's only certain cases that have to be heard by the Supreme Court, like an election dispute would have to go, for the president has to go there. But for the other way that the Supreme Court gets their cases, they basically decide which cases they're going to review. So it's called certiorari. So if it's say it's a case that goes through the district system or the federal court system, so there's the district court, the circuit courts, and then it goes to the Supreme Court. It's not an automatic thing. Like, the Supreme Court can decide if they want to hear cases that have been appealed to the circuit court already. So someone else obviously challenged, I'm sure a lot of people challenged ABC in the federal court, and the appellate court, the circuit court, upheld it. And there was a couple of cases that they denied cert on. So there was a couple of challenges and the Supreme Court just said basically just means we're affirming what the circuit court says, and we're not going to review the case.
So I'm really curious about what was AB5 and why was it even added in the first place? I mean, there were already laws concerning contractors working and not. So why a new law?
Yes. So AB5 it's basically it's a strict version of how you review whether or not a worker is classified as an independent contractor or an employee. So all 50 states have laws that they figure out how they're going to classify somebody as an employee versus an independent contractor, because states don't want employers that, hiring people that should be paid wages as an employee and having them turning them into independent contractors.
So they don't have to pay. They don't have to pay medical benefits. They don't have to pay all.
They don't have to pay withholding taxes. That's the biggest one. They don't have to pay workers' comp to cover the independent contractor. So if somebody gets hurt, then the state is the one that ends up paying for it. So they all have their own tests. So there was a case that came up in California called Dynamex. And in that case, the court decided that the ABC test was going to be used. And the ABC test is basically, it's a 3-part test. The worker is free from control and direction of whoever's hiring them.
Mm-hmm.
The worker performs work that's outside the usual course of the hiring entity's business. So in other words, roofer, if they're going to hire someone to do roofing, that's not outside the course of their business. But if they're going to hire someone maybe to do copper work or something like that, then they would maybe be outside the course of the business. So a roofer hiring a roofer
to do roofing
is not under B. That's not, you can't make them an independent contractor. And then C, the third part of the test, the workers customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, or business. So if they already have their own business, their own entity set up, their own LLC, their own corporation, and they're getting hired, they may be considered a contractor.
Does that include loan out corporations or?
That includes loan out.
Okay.
We'll talk about that in a second. So basically, if any of these 3 things were there, then they're considered an employee. Like that's what the law says. So instead of, like before, it was kind of a combination of tests, and it was like a touchy-feely thing where, okay, yeah, they're in the same occupation, but they have their own business. So we're going to say that they're independent contractors, right? So, but now if any of these factors exist, they're considered to be employees. So that's what the law did. It made it a strict test. And that's why it would affect loan-out corporations. Well, it could affect loan-out corporations because, see, loan-out corporations are a little different because a loan-out corporation is an entertainer saying that they can be hired by an outside company that's going to pay the entertainer, right? But they want to pass it through the entertainer's own LLC or own corporation, right? So technically, the entertainer's being paid by their own company. So that's the loan out part of it. So SAG had put out a statement that still applies today when AB5 was passed, that AB5 does not affect loan out corporations.
Okay.
Because loan out, if you're hired, say, under a SAG contract, you're considered an employee. So your loan out company would have to pay you, even though it's your own company, would have to pay you as an employee. Right. So therefore, the outside party who's hiring you through your loan out can pay the loan out directly.
Okay. And then the loan out is responsible for paying you as the employee, and even if you're the only person in the.
Yep. So paying the dues, paying the not the dues, the pension and health, paying the withholding taxes, paying all of those things. The loan out corporation would be responsible for that.
So does that mean I had to pay myself as an employee if it's just me and my loan out corporation?
If it's a union job, yes, you would.
Okay.
If it was not a union job, that's where the question mark comes up, and that's where the issues arise. So if it's a non-union job, just what you said, does that mean now I have to pay myself as an employee, or can I be paid as an independent contractor through my loan out corporation? So what the the net effect of the law for entertainers and for voiceover artists and actors is that it's scared the employers and the producers in California, where they don't want to work with they only want to hire you as an employee. They don't want to work with your loan-out corporation. So they'll go out of state and hire. They'd rather go out of state and hire a worker out of state, because if you're out of state, then California ABC or California AB5 doesn't apply to an out-of-state worker. They can only police workers that are in the state. So
I know many actors thinking, okay, like what do I do now? Because they don't want to hire me as an independent contractor. So maybe the loan out corporation's a way to go. But now you're saying a loan out isn't even bulletproof.
Well, I think it is.
Okay.
This is why.
Okay.
So, and it's really the fear factor that you have to get around. So you have to kind of convince the producers and the hirers that it's okay to go through a loan out corporation.
Okay.
So what I do, and I've done this before for several clients, is we do a loan out agreement between the loan out corporation and the employee. So the owner will have their own loan out agreement, and we'll do one with who's ever hiring them. So there's 2 loan out agreements.
Okay.
Right. And sometimes who's ever hiring the loan out corporation, the outside client, will want the worker, the actor, to be set up as an SLLC. But as long as they have some kind of LLC or corporation around them, with the 2 loan out agreements,
right,
you can usually get them to work with it, because there is a fine art exemption that hasn't been tested yet under the law, basically saying that fine artists are exempt from.
So which will
85.
definitely be tested in the next very soon.
It will be tested, and it will probably be tested through a loan out. That'd be my guess. Someone that has a loan out corporation, they'll be that's how that whole scenario that I just went through is going to be tested. But if you look at ABC, the intent of it, and AB5, the intent is to make sure that, like I just said, roofers or workers like that, or, what do you call it? Uber drivers, right? That they're not being misclassified as independent contractors, and then the burden's being shifted to them to pay their own employment taxes and their own workers' comp, right? That's the intent of this law.
So I'm curious. Let's say I'm doing a project to project. I'm editing. Let's say I'm editing for somebody, and I've got the same client I've had for years, but I only work for them 2 times a month, whatever. Does that mean if they say, oh, you have to be an employee, then they can tell me, bring your gear down here. We want you to work here. You have to be here at 5 o'clock. You have to leave at 6, or whatever that is. And that's one of the main reasons why I do not want to be an employee. And can you reject employee status as a contractor?
Well, see, the thing is, technically, whoever's hiring you as an employer has control, right? And that's the A. That's A of the ABC test, control. But in actuality, that's not what happens, right? So that's the argument that there's an exemption for fine artists, because they can hand you a script and tell you how to, go ahead and read this, but it's still yours. There's still a lot of interpretation that's going into how that script is being performed, or if you're editing something, there's still a lot of your knowledge and skill that's being put into how the editing is being done, and which background music to pick and where to cut and how to transition, right? So unless the employer were to tell you each and every one of those steps, right, you're not being controlled. You know what I mean? So here in Connecticut, we use the ABC test too. And let me just give you an example, because this usually comes up in workers' comp type of scenarios, where someone gets hired as an independent contractor to do painting or roofing, and then they end up getting hurt, and then they make a claim against the person who hired them as their employer, right? So this test comes up all the time.
Okay.
So that's the likely scenario. right? So there was one case here in Connecticut where a painter was hired by a general contractor, right? But the painter gave specific directions. I mean, sorry, the general contractor gave specific directions to the painter on where to put the ladder, how high to put the ladder, what brushes to use, what paint to use, right? So the Workers' Comp Commission and ultimately the Connecticut Supreme Court said that he was an employee.
Yeah.
Because they exerted that kind of control over the
Wow,
painter.
yeah,
If they had just said,
crazy.
"Here, go paint the side of my building," and he showed up, whatever time he wanted to, and use his
As
own
long as he got
tools
the job done.
right, then he would be an independent contractor under
Okay.
the tests. So that sheds a little light on it. So it's a lot harder to you put the ABC test to some kind of a fine artist or an editor, somebody like that, because they're not telling you. They can't tell you exactly how to do. I want you to do the transition here, and I want you to do the cut here, and I want this background music here.
Unless they're the director, in which case then they definitely
if they're an actor
are.
and the director is telling you, okay, you go from here to here when you're acting, and I need you to speak these lines and so forth.
But the director's also being hired by that same person that hired you.
Okay.
So they're the same issue. They're not an employee.
I see. It just keeps going up to whoever, whatever. Well, I know a lot of times like Universal, or when I've worked with Disney already, they have a filing system. They make you an employee for however many days it is. Right. You get a voucher, you get a form, they do all of that stuff. And to me, I think that's already been in place for a long time. So is it something more that most companies are going to have to maybe transition to some form of that? Because, Disney doesn't tell me, they just tell me be here at this time, do this. And then at the end of the day, go home. That's it, and then that's done.
Well, that's what AB5 is telling those companies to do. Pay all you guys, all of us as employees, do the withholding, pay whatever benefits are required under law. That's what the law is saying to do. So that's why companies like Disney and bigger companies like that are just doing that. They're just putting you on payroll and paying you through the payroll system and paying the employment tax so that they don't have an issue with AB5. So they don't want to be the test case. You know what I mean? They don't want to have to challenge the fact that no, that's an independent contractor. They just want to pay everybody as employees and make it easy. And that's kind of what AB5 is trying to get at too. That they're trying to simplify something and put a bright line, black and white test where there's really not. Never was a black and white test. Whether someone's an independent contractor or an employee, that's always been a question of fact, and it's always been on a case by case basis. So they're trying to make it where it's, oh no, this is the rule where there's too many variables to do that.
Right.
So that's why the loan out corp kind of that puts a huge variable on the side of the artist. It's like, oh, look, I have my own corporation. I set my own time. I have my own discretion. I'm going to pay the employment tax if I have to. I'll pay it myself out of my own corporation. So that's where it makes it where I think it puts it where it's not under AB5.
What is your advice to an actor or a creative person, anybody in the entertainment business who has a loan out, but then they're kind of being urged by the company to be an employee? What are the ups and downs of that? Because they have to make a decision.
Right. That happens all the time. So that's what I was talking about. Usually, so a couple of cases where that happened, the artists came to me and then I intervened on behalf of them. Okay. And I said, look, here's our loan out agreement between the LLC and the artist. Give me a loan out agreement between you and the loan out corp, and now we're good. And then most of the time, they make you sign a waiver saying, you're going to be responsible for the taxes, whatever, and then they're okay with it. But sometimes they're not. But
I think especially if they see,
they're going to default to employer. They're going to default to you being an employee. So
what are the pitfalls, and what if an actor who has a loan out corporation decides to go ahead and become an employee? Are there any pitfalls to that personal actor?
Yeah. So the problem with that, and that's where us actors and that's where us artists need to fight back really hard. And that's why we are fighting really hard on this law, because the Tax Reform Act that was passed back in 2020 took away pretty much every deduction
Mm,
that you could take before as an artist. So,
okay.
uniforms, union dues, travel expenses, you go down the whole list. That you can't, if you're being paid as an employee, you can't take those deductions. So you're basically being taxed double
Double tax.
Double
Yeah.
tax.
because
Yeah.
you're paying out, you're paying your employment tax, you through the withholding, and then
Right.
anything you're making as a sole proprietor, as a business, or as an LLC, you're paying tax on that too. So you can't use you can't use the jobs that you're being paid as an employee to write off your other jobs. So you're getting paid a lot. You're paying a lot more taxes.
Huge
Yeah, that's all I
disadvantage.
saw for this whole thing was just it's just about tax money. It's like
Right.
we want to get tax money that cannot be written off. It's like, sorry.
That's the state's interest, of course. The state's interest is to make sure they're collecting the employment taxes, because a lot of times independent contractors, like Uber drivers, roofers, they're getting paid in cash sometimes. So they're not collecting any tax from either side on it. So that's one of the reasons. And like I said before, workers' comp,
Right.
that's another big issue. So an Uber driver gets into a car accident, right? And if they don't have their own comp, they're not going to be covered.
Mm.
Right? So they're going to have to make a claim against
Mhm.
Uber. And then if Uber's like, nope, we don't have insurance, then it's the state ultimately that ends up paying for it. So those are the two main concerns of any state, is tax money and not having to pay workers' comp if there's no insurance.
Do you think truckers might have been an afterthought when they were making this law? Because it seemed like what it's doing to truckers is really kind of the major thing, because each person owns their own truck.
Right.
And they decide who they want to work with, when they want to drive. And it seems like it was targeted at Uber and Lyft, but it ended up sucking in the truckers in a major way that I don't even, it seems like they didn't even think about what it was doing to that part of the industry.
Well, they didn't. And actually, it was one of the articles that I read it was pretty funny, because there was actually attorneys and producers that had actually given input to the legislator about the effect, and they basically said, "Oh no, there wouldn't be any effect on producers or artists, and we could still use loan out corps." And they didn't think about any of this. Like, none of this stuff was, even the experts that they called in didn't foresee any of these issues when they were passing the law. So truckers, I'm sure, are one of those groups, because truckers are the ultimate independent contractor, right? They own their cab of their truck. They get hired on the road. they hook up their truck to some trailer, wherever they pick it up, and then they drive. That's it, right?
Yeah, and I think if
why
we're
would you
already
need-
having a supply chain problem, why right now would you do something that was literally, they can't get enough drivers and there's not enough people moving stuff? I'm like, who are the people that are making these laws? I'm a common dude. I don't have any legal thing, but that's
No, you're an
common
entertainment
sense.
dude.
I'm an entertainment dude.
Yes.
But it's like common sense. Like, if you already have a supply chain problem, it's truckers who are bringing things, and there's not enough truckers. Why are you going to make it harder for them to do their job?
It's common sense. Really has nothing to do when it comes to law, really.
This doesn't make any sense. Well, I think.
Do you know the old saying? The old saying
What's
about
that?
making law. So there's two things you never want to witness: making sausage and making laws.
Because they're both nasty and terrible.
Yeah, exactly. So it's true.
Okay, so just a scenario. Let's create a scenario, and let's walk through it. So I have a production company, and I'm hired by my partner, business partner, friend, whoever, who has a production company.
Yep.
And he is ultimately giving his client my work through him.
Right.
So if he hires me on to DP or to edit or to direct something, we are in the same business field.
Right.
But he's hired me as a component of a team necessary to execute for his client. And ultimately, I do not have any say over the final distribution, where it goes. I'm just on. How does it affect that process? Can I still be an independent contractor? Does he have to hire me as an employee, even if it's a one-day gig? Does that mean I'm covered all year by his insurance because I'm an employee? Like, how does that work?
No, so that's also another aspect of this that will probably get challenged, and that's the business to business exception.
Mm-hmm.
So if a business hires another business, they don't have to be paid as an employee. That's another exception, like the fine artists
Right.
exception. So that's another avenue of challenge for a loan out corp is going to be the business to business. So, because what you're describing is a business to business scenario. It's not a business to consumer scenario. It's not a, consumer or not a business hiring you as an individual, right? They're hiring your business. So even though you're within the same field, there's an exception that says if you're both businesses, you're both legitimate arm's length business, and the ultimate product is it's a business to business transaction.
Right.
AB5 doesn't apply. That's what there's an exception in the law. But again, we talked about the issues before. Does that mean a loan out corporation, because you are in the same business, is that okay or is it not okay? Like that's on its face, it looks like it's okay. But that's what it'll be. There's going to be court cases about it.
Right.
So what do we do in the meantime? Like, what's the best thing that I can do in that scenario? Like, I have people that I hire that work with me. Whenever he hires me, I'll have an editor. I'll have I'll have other people that I contract to fulfill his expectation that he's fulfilling for his client. Like, what in the meantime, until those things are tried in court, like what should I start thinking about doing in order to kind of protect myself so I'm not the court case that they're looking at?
Yeah, you have an LLC. Just make sure whoever you're working with has some kind of corporate structure, so not a sole proprietor, because I think the sole proprietors are going to be the one that'll be more likely to say that they're, if they have a loan out agreement, it's not going to apply because they're not properly set up as an LLC or an entity, right? Or they're going to say, no, the sole proprietor is individual. You should have hired them as an employee, right? So make sure whoever you're working with have some kind of corporate structure.
So if I have a corporation in Florida and I'm doing business here and I know I'm a foreign entity or whatever, if it's a corporation, does that would not apply if I'm under a corporation?
If you're under a corporation, then you're a business. You should fall under the business to business exemption of AB5.
Okay.
So
best thing to do right now is if you're an independent contractor, you're doing it as solo, do the steps necessary to get a loan out corporation or form an LLC,
right?
So that you can act as a business to business transaction.
Exactly, right.
Okay.
And the most likely scenarios that I can see that are going to be challenged, it's going to be more on film production, right? So say you get hired as an editor on set, Jason, right? And then they hire the grip and they hire the, the sound guy and they hire the cameraman and the DP, right? Well, a lot of times in the past, they would get paid as independent contractors, right? The producer would pay them as independent contractors. And a lot of times you guys wanted to be independent contractors most of the time, right?
Always. I can't think of a time when I want to be an employee ever.
So the problem is going to be now they may have to treat you as an employee. Right, so the producer
you mean
may have
mean
to
and
pay
terrible and abusive? Great, lovely.
Well, they're going to treat you the same way personally, but they're going to pay you as an employee.
Great, so I get paid less, I owe more in taxes, and they treat me the same. I see no benefits whatsoever from this scenario.
Right. So but the way that it's going to happen with the challenge, in my opinion, is you're going to be hired on an independent film set. You're going to get paid as an independent contractor through your loan out. Then you're going to go file an unemployment after the job's over because, this is what actors and independent contractors
I'm unemployed,
do,
filed.
Right. You're going to file it. Then that's when the challenge is that's when the producer is going to come up and that's when they're going to scrutinize you possibly too.
Right? Oh, wow. Yeah. So let's not do this.
So because that's what happened. Like that's what normally happens on the film industry is, like the actors and the crew, after they're done, they go file for unemployment. And that's where that's where AB5 is trying to crack down. So then you're going to have all that proof in line to be ready to prove that, yes, I was an independent but if you're acting as an employee, if you're an independent contractor, why are you filing for unemployment? That's right. That's the question you're going to
Yeah, I can't. I don't think I'd ever filed for that. I don't think.
So I've read that Also, this may be effective retroactively. So if California is looking for money, are they going to go and look for violations in the past during, since it's been passed? How's that going to work?
Yeah. So basically what that means is, the law was passed back in 2019.
Right.
Right. So as the court cases was going on, of course, California they weren't challenging people, or they were doing it minimally because they didn't know what the court was going to say or rule. So what they're saying is that all the cases that they kind of put on hold throughout the time of the court case, they can pick back up. So retroactively from when the court decided they didn't want to decide they basically said, by not deciding, they said the law is legal. That's what they said. It's not that it's constitutional. So they're saying retroactively from when the court took no action. They're not talking about before the law was passed.
Right.
They're talking about in this time between it was passed and when the Supreme Court took no action.
But there's a couple of years there to do violations. I mean, right? Yeah. So, what should someone do if they suspect that they might, be targeted, and what's their next step?
So they need to just make sure they have all their paper together. Because if you can, I just read you the test earlier, the ABC. Like, they need to make sure they had no control. They had to make sure that the person was in a separate industry, separate business. And if they were doing work for other people, because they had their own other company set up, those are the things that the state's going to want to look for, the Department of Labor. That's what they're going to look for. So make sure you have all your paperwork together so that you can, when you get a challenge, you just hand it over and say, no, these guys were definitely independent contractors, or these people that I hired. And this is why. Here you go. I had no control. They had their own companies, and they were doing work for other people beside me. And what was the third one? I forgot already. They were different businesses.
Different business.
I'm a producer. They're a sound guy. It's not right. And that also is a gray area, though.
Because it's all entertainment. I mean, it's all
on the same film. So they're going to be like, but it's on the same film. But no, I'm not a sound guy. I need to
What if I'm a director and I hire a director because I've got 2 films I'm working on, and I hire a contractor to do one? Because I've had several shows. I'll be doing a commercial. I can't get to it. I hire another director to do that while I'm working on something else. Like, we're both directors, but I can't be in 2 places at once, and he's a contractor.
That's the business to business, where you're hiring someone else to do your job somewhere else. Because there's not, unless you have a clone. That's the business to business. So that's okay, but you have to prove that. You have to show there was 2 work sites at the same time. They were at one, you were at the other, and you subbed it out to them. That's fine.
Yeah, and I didn't determine when they, I just said, because technically, if you think about it, I tell you, be here at 6:00, perform X duty while you're here, and we're done at this such and such a time, and I get to decide when you leave. So that's like, he was controlling me the whole day. Yeah. Oh, and he decided when I went to lunch, like lunch is at 1 to 4. Like he decided I went to lunch, so it's like, he controlled me the whole day.
There is an element of control, yes, and that's the problem. There is an element of control. So
isn't there in everything though? I think there's don't paint my draperies. Control. You're controlling me. I didn't know. I want to paint the draperies. That you hired me to do a job. I'm like.
I mean, there's an element of control. It depends on the detail of control. Yeah. So,
and
telling someone to get there, that's not control.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Right.
Unless they send a car out for you, or pay you to take the train or an Uber or whatever. Then there could be you're overstepping normal control. But if they get there on their own, right? You're just telling them to be here at such and such a time. If they're late, right? And you're not firing them because they're late. Again, that's you're giving some control, but it's not the amount of control that crosses the line to make them an employee. So
this is kind of just figure itself out over the next 10 years from lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit.
It's good. Like I said, this stuff has been going on a lot longer than 2019.
Yeah.
So now it's just all they did was codify the ABC test. That's all they did. So, and they tried to take a little discretion away from the Department of Labor. They tried to give them a little more guidance as to what they can allow and they can't allow. So all the case law that happened before is still valid. So like if there was a case like I said before where there was a painter and the general contractor told the painter how to set up the ladder and all that stuff, like that's still going to apply even after the new law is passed.
Yeah.
Because that the court already decided that. And so if those same set of circumstances come up, then it's going to be in the favor of the employee.
It's going to apply still.
Right? It's still going to apply, right?
In a kind of a simple ABC kind of explanation, if somebody out there is an independent contractor, a producer, an actor, or whatever, what should they do right now to protect themselves and their own interests? What would you recommend?
So for film producers, they're taking a risk if they don't pay their crew as employees. So if they want to be 100% compliant and make sure there's no problems, they should pay their crew and cast as employees.
So that's like hire out a payroll service that handles that signs the people on. They fill out the W-2, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. Right. And if they want to, if your crew and your cast want to work out something with a payroll company where they give them loan outs and stuff like that, then that's fine. It's not on you anymore. The payroll company is the one that's taking care of that stuff. So that's the safest thing to do.
So it might be good to look into payroll companies if you're a producer right now and you're not doing so already.
Yeah. And I would, if you are a film producer, I think the film producers are the ones at the highest risk, because I think from reading this law, it looks like that was one of the things that was targeted by the legislator was the film industry, because they didn't want that to happen, even though it could happen legally. I think they targeted it in here so that it would clamp down on that, because they want cast and crew to be paid as employees. But
which means they have to get a minimum wage at least. Yeah, and they don't want to be. I don't want to be paid as an employee. It's terrible.
So that's where there may be cast and crew that come in and defend the producer.
I know they will. I am absolutely positive they will.
So that's where it's going to get interesting.
And like, we don't want to press charges. Done.
Yeah, right. Well, no, I'm an independent contractor and I gave all my paperwork.
Right.
Here it is. Yeah. I don't want unemployment. Here it is. Right.
Yeah, and that's my thought. Is like, I want to deny employership. I do not want to be employed by you. I will work with you, but I do not want to be employed by you.
Right.
What kind of right do I have? Like, can I decline employment?
You can say, sure, of course you can. You can say, I don't want to be an employee. I'm not going to work as an employee. Then you can even sign a waiver that says I'm an independent contractor. The other thing that a producer should do, however, is make sure you have comp insurance, even if you're hiring an independent contract. Even if you're hiring independent contractors as crew, make sure your comp coverage covers everybody, because that'll be the other way that the producer could get in trouble if somebody gets hurt and they don't have insurance. Mm-hmm. The state's going to pay, and then ultimately they're going to go after the producer. So even if you use loan out corporate companies for all of your crew, cast and crew, make sure your comp through the payroll company covers everybody in case of injury. And they usually only charge like 5 or 10% of the bill to cover for comp. So but make sure you have that, because you don't want somebody getting hurt on the job, even as an independent contractor, making a claim because obviously they got a broken leg and they can't work.
Right.
And then the state finds out there's no insurance, no one had insurance, then they're going to come in and then they're going to turn you over to the Department of Labor, and you're going to be subject to fines and all that stuff. So,
which is going to cost more than the comp would have originally.
Yeah, no, exactly. What the state does is they pay, and then they charge penalties and interest and even fines. So yeah, it's going to be. There's a lot of, and in most states you can't discharge that in bankruptcy, so they're going to chase you forever for that. So it's not a good thing. I mean, states will make deals, though. They will make deals. I've seen that too. They'll make a deal with, they don't want to chase you forever, so they'll make a deal with you. But you're still going to end up paying. So you might as well just do it up front.
And that's also, I guess, where it's important to have a corporation because you won't be responsible personally, correct?
No, you'll still be responsible.
You'll still be
personally
responsible personally
for comp,
for comp.
or any tax or comp. So any of these things, they could the state could pierce the veil and go after the principals.
That's another good thing to know.
So the corporation's not going to protect you from an AB5 wanting
Violation.
payroll taxes paid, or no workers' comp, and the state had to pay because that's considered tax. So they go after that's personal liability.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, if anybody
a lot of
has
information and all.
Yeah, if anybody has any more questions, A, you can put them in the comments, and B, Rob, if they want to contact you for any personal consultations regarding this, how can they get in contact with you?
So my email is robscig@usa.net, robsig@usa.net, or you can go to robsigesq.com. That's my website.
Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much for shedding some more light on this. I'm sure other issues will come up, and like you said, the court cases. So we'd love to have you back on to discuss this even further as more questions come to light.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm going to be keeping my eye on it as things develop, because they are very interesting issues, and there's definitely great arguments on both sides.
Right.
And there's definitely potential for conflict on both sides too. And I find it ironic, like we just talked about, that even actors and crew members want to be paid as independent contractors, and they're kind of on the same side as the producers, and they're both fighting against AB5.
Don't want to lose their freedom.
It's funny. So
yeah.
Wow. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining our show.
Yes, thank you.
Look forward to having you on again.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
Take care.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So that helps out a lot. It looks like there's still a lot of questions that are yet to be answered through court cases, but Rob at least gave us some tips to kind of protect ourselves in the meantime, and things to look out for that you don't trip over.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think obviously from hearing this, just the sooner the better. Just making sure that you're shored up all the way around. I think having options available for, if someone does want to be, you are working on there, they do want to be an employee, and you are hiring them, and specifying at least have a payment system set up so that they can be treated like employees if they're on the set for you, unless you have a loan out core or business to business agreement with them. It really looks like the best thing we can do right now in terms of just prepping for these laws, because like you said, even retroactive. So if you don't comply with the law now, and it ends up getting passed and all through court, and it determines that you were or have been liable, then all of that stuff's retroactive. You'll have to pay fines all the way up to when you started not complying with the law. So I think the best thing, it seems like from this, if you're a producer, is to go ahead and set up your, work with the payroll system that's going to be able to put people on as employees when they're working, have workman's comp, make sure that those things are covered, or have business to business agreements, or with the loan out corporation and LLC, and waivers that say, I am an independent contractor, I recognize I'm liable. So having somebody like Robert look over your paperwork for you is crucial in terms of
reputable lawyer like Robert on your side.
Yes. So maybe just start looking into research to find out what's the best way to do this, and then, contact Robert and find out exactly, hire him to help you get all of those things in structure. Because I think like Robert said, it ended up costing you more. If nothing happens, fine, whatever, good for you. But chances are, especially with something so messy, there are going to be complications, and being covered and showing that you've done your very best to try to comply with the law, I think that's going to go a long way in court. So
someone to generate all the paperwork you need, and all the I's dotted and T's crossed, so that you're completely covered.
Sounds like you need to set aside some extra money.
Yes.
To comply with laws that are supposed to help you. But there we go. We'll see how it works.
Set aside some extra money to save you from paying a whole lot more money later.
There you go. That's the toss-up. So anyways, this has been another episode of Entertainment Dudes. We're excited to have you. Follow us on all of the podcast places, iTunes, Spotify, anywhere that you can follow your podcast, and on YouTube again.
And another thing that can kind of help you in all situations is wearing one of these.
What a beautiful shirt. Where do you acquire such incredible merchandise?
Ooh, merch.entertainmentdudes.com. So
Actually,
while
still
you're-
like that's the same shirt, right? Have you?
Yeah,
have
this
you?
is- yeah, this is, yeah.
They're great. Good
It's
quality.
great.
I love mine.
So-
I actually wear it on the regular.
While you're setting aside some money for, insurance,
Your
and
insurance.
lawyers, just set aside some money for some merch too,
Yeah.
because it'll just
You're
make
gonna
you
want that.
feel good. Have Jason's and my smiling face on your chest all day. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
And people will be staring at your chest all day. So
all day. It's like,
no better feeling.
who are those geeks?
I don't know. Who
I
are
don't
those?
know. Anyway, yeah, this has been Entertainment Dudes. Thank you so much. Next week, we'll have some great content coming in here.
Yes, we have Stephen Yake coming up. He's been a
Yes.
director in Nashville. He's done a lot of music videos, Christian music videos, regular music videos. And then
Worked
he's
a lot
also
with
directed a number of
CMT
shows.
and
He worked with
yes.
CMT, GAC, and he's had over a 30-year career. So he's going to talk about
Yep.
successes and failures and things that worked and
And
didn't.
a huge
and-
new project coming up with John Schneider, who is Bo Duke in the Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah,
So
which is
that's
going to be
coming up, too.
pretty awesome. So that's going to be a great, really informative
Yep.
interview, and I have no doubt that you're really going to enjoy it if you like all things entertainment.
All things entertainment. This has been Entertainment Dudes. Thanks for watching.